So for those of you who just arrived, my name is Ann Park. I'm the career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services at U of T School of Continuing Studies, and I am facilitating an incredible presentation called Real Talk: Maximize Your Job Experience. And this session is being recorded and it will be shared on our Blueprint Career Services website. And also, I should let all of you know that this session will be shared on YouTube in a few weeks or so. So that is important to let you know. Just letting people in. So I just wrote in the chat, everyone, if you feel like filling that in, where are you coming from right now? Where are you living? What do you hope to get out of today's session? That'd be great. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. So welcome everyone to a Blueprint Career Services presentation, Real Talk: Maximizing Your Job Fair Experience. Next slide, please. So first I'm going to do a quick access check. Can everyone see the presentation clearly? And are there any other access needs that might affect your participation? You can write in the chat. You can put a thumbs up if you want. Or you can put in the chat, yes, no, yes, 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 no. Okay, thanks, all good. Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement now. I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. As a colonizer settler myself, I and throughout my education, engaging in studies where I've had the opportunity to learn about the history of Indigenous people in Canada. I have learned about ways that I contribute to colonization and to the oppression of Indigenous people living in Canada. And I work towards to continue my education and come up with ways to help work towards decolonization. If we can move to the next slide, great. All right, so just a few housekeeping items, everyone. Please remember to keep your mics off during the presentation. We encourage you to turn your cameras on during the presentation, as this will improve our guest speakers' engagement with you. And so Michelle kindly pointed out that thanks, Sad. Hi, Sad. um, part of part of this work that we're doing with regards to getting us ready for job fairs is really taking steps to put yourself out there, right? And being comfortable um, putting yourself forward, because as we know, most job fairs are in person, and so in order to build those strong connections with folks, it does help to turn your cameras on and and that way you're more engaged. So thanks for that, Michelle. It's great advice. Feel free to post questions and comments in the chat during the presentation. So we will have a Q&A. Oh, of course, you don't have to turn your camera on if you're eating. Again, it's optional. But thanks, yes. So please feel free to post questions and comments in chat during the presentation. We might, just because of the style that Michelle tends to engage in, which is very open and casual and engaging, we might answer some of the questions throughout. She might choose to go through some questions, but there is a designated time at the end of the presentation, so 1 to 1:30, when we do go to those questions in the chat. But again, feel free to put them in during the presentation. For those of you who missed this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Blueprint Career Services portal and will be shared on YouTube. So just to warn you. Thank you. All right, before we begin with our incredible presentation, I just want to share with everyone, tell everyone a little bit about what we do at Blueprint Career Services, and let you know about other incredible offerings that we provide in addition to our Real Talk presentations. So let me just tell you a little bit about that. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so my first question to everyone is, well, first I wanted to let you know that I've been working as a career strategist, as an employment counselor for over 20 years now. So I've worked with a really diverse audience folks who have very minimal formal education, those with a lot of formal education, recent graduates, high school students, to folks who are towards the end of their career. And through that time, there is a question that I tend to get asked, like the number one question. Oh, thanks, Michelle. But yeah, there's a question that I tend to get asked over and over and over again. Does anyone have any guesses? So you can just type it in the chat or you can shout it out. I mean, it's a small enough group. Any guesses? You can turn your mics on. What's the number one question you think people ask me when they first meet with me? Any guesses? How do I get hired? Yeah, definitely. That's a good one. Anything else? Like thinking about why are they seeing how to navigate careers, interviews. Absolutely. Interviews are huge. Any other guesses? How do I get references? Oh, these are really great. Absolutely. I've been asked all these questions. How to use LinkedIn. Yep. Any other?
How do I stand out?
How do I stand out? Yeah, I get that. I get that too. These are all really good guesses, but the number one question that I get asked is, by working with you, can you promise that I will get a job? And my answer is yes, absolutely. By working with me, you will get a job, but it requires work from your part as well. And so when I'm working with clients, it's really a relationship that we both work together to work towards achieving your career goal. And by doing that, folks are successful. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Carla? Sorry, our invisible person, Carla. She's our administrator. Next slide, please. Thank you. In fact, over 90% of the folks I've worked with over the years have been successful in achieving their career goals, such as these people whose faces who I actually don't know, but it's a very nice collage. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so let's briefly go through our offerings here. So we have the Career Nav, our one-on-one career strategist sessions. Some of you have participated in these, and it's good to see some familiar faces. They're one-on-one career strategist sessions with me, and the kind of support that I provide is ongoing. So even if you just sign up for one session or three sessions for that matter, I will be providing you with ongoing support via LinkedIn messaging or email. And it's special, it's individualized support. Oh yeah, definitely Clifton Strengths. I'll definitely get to that. It's individualized support based on your needs. We also have something called the Clifton Strengths Workshop, which Michelle is quite familiar with. But for those of you who are not familiar with they're based on positive psychology principles in which you would do an assessment which would identify your top 5 strengths, engage in the workshop where you would learn about the science behind Clifton Strengths, and then, of course, the next portion, you'd learn about how to use your strengths to elevate your career. And then you would get a one-on-one session with me to discuss this further and come up with a plan. You know, a lot of a lot of the folks I've worked with over the years, I find like doesn't matter how much formal education they have or how little where they are with their career, if they don't have the language or the confidence in order to effectively market themselves to employers, it's really, really difficult. So Clifton Strengths really does help boost your confidence and gives you the language to effectively market yourself to employers, like at job fairs. So it's a really fantastic opportunity. We also have something called the Career Wayfinding Series workshops. There are three-hour workshops based on the New York Times best-selling Design Your Life series out of Stanford University. Check out the books. They're fantastic. You can buy them. You can get them from the library. They also have YouTube. But the workshops provide a very structured approach to planning your career, and it puts you in the driver's seat instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of these employers. No, you're in control, and this is how you can do it. Next, we have something called the Alternative Careers Workshops. And so with these, this is for primarily internationally trained professionals who are coming from regulated professions and who, coming to Canada, are looking to find out their options in terms of what kind of careers to move it into that will use their skills and experience from their previous regulated profession, and to help folks make an informed decisions. Like you may decide to choose an alternative career, or you may decide to pursue your regulated profession in Canada. So it's a really fantastic workshop for that. And of course, we have our Real Talk and Industry Insights panels. Obviously, this is an example of our Real Talk. That's every other month. They're online from 12 to 1:30, you know that. But Industry Insights, we have folks coming from specific industries who will talk about how to get jobs in these particular areas. Um, I will give you a little sneak peek of the one that's happening next month. And I'm really excited to share this with all of you. So next month, we will be having our really good friend Sharon from U of T, UTemp and U of T Hires facilitate information session on how to get hired at U of T and the benefits of working here. And I'm so excited because, it's like you pull open the curtain because, oh, U of T is so, no, it's not. It's U of T is for everyone. They're great opportunities. So once we absolutely, Michelle, you should attend. I'm serious. So once we have more information on it, we will be sending portal members such as yourself everything that you need to know. I should let all of you know as well that, as you know, Real Talk is free, and so is Industry Insights Panel. The Industry Insights Panel. There are fees for our other offerings, but if you're receiving OW or ODSP, all of our services can be covered on a case-by-case basis. And if you have any questions about that or any of our offerings, please do email me at scs.blueprint@utoronto.ca, or you can ask questions in the chat. Next slide, please, Carla. And please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always glad to meet new professionals, and I've gotten into the habit of writing LinkedIn posts that hopefully will be helpful to folks as they navigate their careers. And I'm definitely available to have a chat if you'd like, but strategically. So please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would be glad to connect. And again, you'll have access to a ton of resources and posts and information that will help you guide your way. Next slide, please. Okay. Enough of Blueprint. Let's get to the really good stuff. That was good stuff, but this is like really good stuff. All right. So let's meet our guest speaker. Oh, yes, I will. If you can do me a favor, Abimbola, I hope I'm saying that right. If you could send Blueprint Career Services an email requesting that information, I can send that to you right away. So if you can maybe, let's see here, if you can put your email, let's see here. Yeah, if you can, Carla, if you can share our email address in the chat, that would be great. So that way, if you want to find a list of the cost, we can folks who are interested can email us, because I know that was really quick. But please do, if you can do that, Carla, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. You're so amazing, Carla. Okay. As I was saying, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michelle Vella, our guest speaker. Thanks, Abimbola. She has over a decade of multiple career changes, and she found her calling as a career strategist focusing on self-discovery and career marketing. Prior to this, she gained invaluable experience in various roles, including HR consultant for the transportation and nonprofit sectors, campus recruiter in the automobile industry, researcher within post secondary education, wedding. This is fun. I love this, Michelle. But all this contributes because I've had diverse background too, and it's really helped me with the work that I do. An operations manager within the sporting goods sector. Oh my gosh, you're so interesting. As a career strategist for almost 9 years, she guides her clients to tap into their inner knowing to uncover their authentic career paths and provide strategic, actionable steps to help them achieve their goals. Leveraging her background in recruitment, she offers the insider scoop on how hiring decisions are actually made. So without further ado, let's introduce our incredible panelist or speaker, Michelle Vella. Yay! Take it away, Michelle.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. I'll just start to share my screen as well. Just give me one moment. Okay. Can we see Carla's screen or can we see mine?
We can see yours. It looks great.
Okay, good. I'm already clicking through here. Okay, so it's so nice to meet everybody, and thank you so much for putting your cameras on. It feels so much nicer. And if you've ever facilitated a virtual event, I tell you, there's nothing weirder than talking to yourself. So when I can see you, this feels so good for me. So thank you for doing that. So I want to share with you, how I am here to be able to give you this information. So Carla gave Anne gave a really great introduction of kind of the different things that I've been doing, but I want to give you some more insight on why specifically I can help you with job fairs. So I have attended dozens of job fairs, and I've actually been able to participate in like so many different aspects, all of the aspects of the job fair. So of course I've gone as a job seeker, and you've heard all those different roles that I've had, and I've been able to do really well in them because of my networking skills. So I've been able to go through and attend different job fairs. Of course, in the beginning, my skills weren't as good, but learning along the way. Then I also joined as a recruiter. So I would go to these different recruitment events, a lot with Honda, and I'd go over and be able to meet people all over across Ontario. And that gave me a lot of advice and a lot of insights, even for myself as a job seeker, on how these hiring decisions are made. But where I've gained a lot more of this knowledge was actually, in Anne's position as well as career services and post-secondary, and actually planning and facilitating job fairs myself. So the way that my brain works, and if you can't tell by all the roles that I've done, I do have ADHD. And with that, the way that my brain works is through patterns. So often I would take that role as a facilitator as to be an observer throughout the day. So I would observe how employers were interacting with candidates coming over, job seekers coming over, looking at the body language between both of them and kind of observing that. And then, I'm going over and making sure that all the employers are feeling comfortable, but of course, following up to see like, how is the job fair going for you? Are you finding people that you might want to hire? Who have you talked to that you can still remember their name? Because there's a lot of people coming through. What did they do to stand out to you? I'm gathering this information so I can know and share this information with my clients and with you on how you can really stand out. So this is kind of how I was able to kind of gather this knowledge. And I'm excited to be sharing it with you today. When Carla and Anne and I first met, we were talking about job fairs. And I shared with them a story that I want to share with you because I know that sometimes we go to these job fairs and we ask our friends, like, did you get a job out of that? Did you get a job out of that? And sometimes we don't always hear that people are getting jobs, but people do get jobs. Okay. I want to share with you a story about a time that I worked at Honda. This was the first event, the very first week that I worked at Honda. And the first recruitment event was at Queen's University. I'm hiring engineers. And if anybody knows, like Queen's University is like heavily engineers there. So it was packed with people. It felt like such a blur. I was so overwhelmed. Even picture yourself the first week in a job, and I'm just thrown in there, and all these people are talking to me, passing their resumes. Meanwhile, I literally just learned what actual engineers do. So I felt overwhelmed with all of this information. But I remember that I met a student there. This was back in like October, whatever the year was. It was in October. We weren't quite doing hiring yet, but just kind of seeing what's out there. And I remember talking to the student, and he was so passionate about Honda. He went on and told me all these stories about going to races and going on. And honestly, I already knew from that conversation that he knew more about Honda than I did at the time. But I remembered him, and I had a big stack of resumes, and I remember bringing it back and finding his, and I like kept it on my desk and was telling the other people about him, like other team leads. And we didn't start the recruitment process until like January, I would say, but I remembered that name. And when we started to open up our applications and Queen's University were getting their applications coming through, I looked for that name and I pulled that one out because I couldn't get him out of my mind. It was such a great contact and good person to be following through for an interview. And even compared to other people that I met, that really stood out. And I won't go into all the different things that he did to stand out, but more than anything, the baseline was that it was an authentic, real conversation. And they were ended up being hired. And in fact, they actually turned into they were an intern and now they're a full-time associate. So it does happen. And so I can't wait to kind of go through and kind of give you those clues of, what that student did, what the information that employers have been giving me, so you're able to have that success as well, and maybe be that person that that recruiter is going to remember out of hundreds of people that they met that day. So I'm turning it over to you, and I have a question for you. You can write this in the chat. And if you can talk and let me know what's kind of coming through, because now I've lost the chat here. I'd love to know what you think. Approximately what percentage of positions are filled by someone who's in the hiring team's existing network? Now I have some options for you here. If you can write it in the chat. A, 55, B, 65%, C, 75%, or D, 85%. What do you think?
Okay,
Oh,
Michelle.
now I
So,
can see the chat here.
oh,
It's
you can. You got it sooner
going
myself.
crazy here. I love it.
I don't know if I'm allowed to
Okay.
respond because I guess that's kind of cheating.
Yes.
I'm like,
You know.
no.
Okay, we
Or do
have
I?
variety here. Okay, are you ready? Drum roll. 35%. Can you believe that? That's a huge number. So even if that position goes out, sometimes they already have that kind of list. Kind of like what I was saying to you with that student, right? Like people were applying, but I still had that student in mind that I met before, right? It's a huge number. And I know that could feel frustrating. Like, Carlos, wow, that's a lot. It can feel frustrating to see that. And it feels like very um unfair at first, right? It feels like that's not fair. If they have someone in mind, why are you playing these games and posting this position? But makes a lot of sense. So even think about your own life. When you are wanting to spend your hard-earned money, let's say you want to be hiring a career coach, let's say maybe you want to go on vacation, maybe you want to be, I don't know, getting like some kind of streaming service. You're asking around to your friends and family, hey, what should I be getting? You're getting feedback, you're getting advice, especially when you're spending a large amount of money. So let's say you are going to get a renovation done or something, or maybe you're choosing a school to go to. You're asking around first because that's money to give someone without kind of getting that feedback, right? So you're asking people because by doing that, it's a low risk to you that you have a huge likelihood that you're going to be happy with the service or the product that you're getting because a reputable person that you trust and know gave you that information. So it makes good business sense for companies to do the same thing. They're going to be at least paying someone $60,000 to be coming in to do a job, and they want to make sure that someone's coming in that can do the job, that's trustworthy, that's not going to leave within a month. So that's why they're kind of asking around about who there is, because it is very expensive for companies to make a wrong hire. So as in maybe not having the skills, leaving really soon, whatever the reason is, but a wrong hire is very expensive for companies. In fact, it's about 30% of their wage would be the cost to make that hire. So before they're going out, they're making that decision. And I know we're getting really deep into it, but I think it's important for you to be knowing these different aspects. So you know why it's important to be having that networking piece as a big component to your job search, and job fairs are part of that. I'm just going to read through the comments here as well. Yeah, unfair does come to mind, right? Because it's like, hey, like, I don't know anybody yet. Please look at me. This is why it's important to go in here. And what I'll let you know as well, whether you are an international student or not, even domestic students do feel this way as well. So I'm a first generation Canadian. And even for myself, even though I had a generation of people that were here, I didn't have anyone in my life that had any connections anywhere. Everyone in my family were essentially in like I think almost everybody were cleaners. So nobody knew anybody for me to be going out and reaching to people. So I had to learn and be able to build my own network from scratch. And there's a lot of people here as well that are doing the same thing. So as much as it's tough, we're all kind of feeling that we have to go out and kind of build our network from there. Okay. Okay. Something else that I wanted to kind of bring to your attention as well is that sometimes companies will go into job fairs, and maybe you've seen this before, and they are actually not even actually hiring for a position currently. And you may be thinking, hello, why are you even here? Why am I wasting my time talking to you? And you have nothing for me. What are you here for? So why do you think that employers would actually come there? So I gave a little bit of information here, but what do you think? Why do you think they would want to come to a job fair even if they weren't hiring? You can write it in the chat. Yeah, to get their company name out there. You know what the thing is, especially like, there's big companies out there where everybody knows. So if I'm thinking of, some people on your target list, I bet you there's a lot of people here who would love to work at Google, who would love to work for Facebook, who would love to work for TikTok. Like, there's these big companies that we all know, but there's so many great smaller companies are out there that people don't even think twice about, right? So future turnover or retirement. Yeah. So right now we call this in the recruiting world a retirement tsunami. So many retirements that are happening right now, and they need people to come in, and maybe those people haven't left yet. So in recruitment, we call this we're building a future talent pipeline. So that means we're getting people to know who we are. So when positions come up, we have people who already have eyes on us. We're on their radar that they can go and apply for these positions. So when we're going to these events, we don't always have to look for the next job. And I know that's in our mind because, we could be in a spot where we needed a job yesterday. But it's important to also think about what are future jobs that might be coming up and what's kind of out there. And we know that if we've already been starting to network on LinkedIn, it's very hard to get that face-to-face contact with people or even just one-on-one interaction on LinkedIn. So if we can be in someone's face, we should take that opportunity to be able to build an authentic relationship with them, whether it's for this job or for future jobs as well. So they're out there essentially to, get eyes on them so people know who they are. And when a position comes up, they can have a shorter amount of time to fill that position. So that's why they're there. So still pay attention to them if there's someone that you're interested in. Okay. So again, I want to hear from you. What is your greatest challenge when it comes to job fairs? You can write in the chat. There's so many different reasons, and I'll just share briefly of mine while you're writing yours there. That before I learned how to market myself, before I learned how to do job fairs, I would go in and feel overwhelmed. That's the biggest word that I had because I'd look around at my competition and the employers and it would scare me. And I'd go in and I'd talk like a robot to everybody. I would just fling out resumes and I'd hear nothing back. Your elevator pitch, how to stand out, how to present yourself if you don't have all the qualifications. Yes. Small talk, like it feels awkward, doesn't it? And like, where do you begin and how long do I have with that person? Not having the experience, I know that feels weird. Like you're going in and you're like, can I help you? I don't. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes up. Yes. Yeah, a lot of things to worry about. But the biggest thing that I hear, and I think can cover a lot of these, is that what is my competition doing? So I want to describe to you what it's like to feel like a recruiter on the other end. Okay. So imagine this. You're a recruiter, you set up your table, you have all your swag on there, and the door is open, and students are coming at you and starting to talk to you. Well, it really does feel like such a rush from the recruiter side as well, because you're in a continuous motion of talking to people. And honestly, 98% of conversations go like this. Okay. So here's this guy here. This is representing your competition. Okay. So they go up and just casually stroll to the table and they say, okay, so tell me a little bit more about your company. And so the person will, reiterate their introduction to the company. And meanwhile, like when I'd be there, I'd be like, man, couldn't you have done a little bit of research ahead of time that I'm not having to like start off from like the ground up about what we do? So then there's that part. Then the second part, they're usually not making eye contact. And that's usually because they're nervous, because they're thinking about what they're going to say next, because their eyes are going on what other recruiter am I going to go see next? And essentially, they end up talking at them and not to them. So they are not having a fluid human conversation. They are just blurting out their elevator pitch and like passing out information. And like it's just awkward feeling. And it's awkward for both sides when that happens. And we get it, but nonetheless, you feel it. And so then the competition is going to say, well, what positions do you have available? And so the recruiter might say something, well, I have positions available. What are you looking for? And most people can't answer that question. They have no idea. And they'll say, I'm getting like an MBA. And so I might go into HR and I might go to finance and I might do advertising. And they just list all these different things. We're not going to hire that person because we don't want to be a career experiment. That could still be the case for you, but you don't need to share that. Imagine if you went to get your hair done and the person was like, you know what? Like, I'm in this job, I just started, but next week I might be a plumber. I might be, being a flight attendant. I've kind of dabbled in learning about this stuff, but let's just see how this goes. You would not want to be continuing with that. We want to know that you're interested in what you're interested in, and we want to see if that's a fit. Then they give a generic resume and cover letter and walk off. And these are the type of competition, 98% of who we kind of forget about. Like when the day's over, we usually think of, like one or two people that we really liked in conversation. But 98%, this is what we're getting. So maybe you're looking at it, you're thinking, oh no, I do a lot of these or all of these. That's okay. This is what I did as well. That time where I was being overwhelmed, this was all of the things that I did. So remembering that this is your competition and this is kind of what not to do, all the little pieces that you'll get today, if you even do one of them, you're already going to be, you know, standing out even more from the competition. Okay. So when I'm going to give you some information today, we're looking at it from 3 phases. So pre-fair, during the fair, and post-fair. So first we have the pre-fair. So what do we do ahead of time? And so don't be shy, and I'm not judging, but I want to know, does anyone here do anything ahead of time before they go to a job fair? You can just put like yes or no in the chat. For me, very little preparation before I knew. I would just print off resumes and cover letters. Oh, you are doing, look at that. I feel like as time goes on, people are getting more prepared. This is good. I'm really glad to see that. So now, hopefully, what I'm going to give you is actually just a streamlined plan of what to do. Because then I found that when I was doing preparation, I was doing too much preparation in a way. Maybe it was time spent that I could have done something else and I overwhelmed myself with everything that I was going to do. So here is like your fast checklist of what you need to do. So the first thing is that you're going to look at all the employers that are going to be attending the event. And I want you to make a list of employers that you're interested in talking to. I put 5 to 7, but you don't have to go specifically with that number. Really think about how much time you have before to prepare and how much time you'll be spending at the event. When it comes to connecting with people at the job fair, you want to be focusing on quality, not on the quantity of connections. And if you, depending on how much time you have for when you need a job, if you need a job right away, you may want to look at the person's careers page ahead of time to see if they're actively hiring and prioritize those ones. If you have more time on your hands, you won't have to worry as much and you're just looking to see what is going to be the best fit and how can I start making connections with that employer. So once you have that target list, it's time to do your research. And I know this can be hard. It's hard to kind of figure out what area, what should I be knowing? And to kind of bring out again, what is the average person? What are they researching? They're usually just going to the about section and memorizing that. I can't tell you how many interviews that I've had where people have recited to me, well, the company started in 1995. Of going on to details. Like that is what your competition is doing. Let's go beyond that. So at the end of this workshop, Carla and Anna will be sending out all of the slides from today. There's some additional ones that I won't be sharing that go into a little bit more detail. And then I also have this pre-application worksheet. Now, typically I use this with my clients for them to prepare their resume and cover letter so they have more of an understanding of who their audience is, right? So in any kind of marketing, you need to know your audience. But we can also use this for the pre-fair because we can go through and it's essentially like a checklist of things that you should be knowing about the company. Like what's the size of the company? What do they sell? Who is their competitors? um, what actually is their product and who are they pitching it to? Having kind of an understanding of that. What are some current events that are happening in the organization? This essentially gives you a base level information. So you're going in and knowing that information. If you are saving the recruiter for having to do a whole pitch and they can see that you've done that research, I tell you, you're going to be a shining star. And then from there, do some additional research. And what I want you to do is let your curiosity just lead it. Look and see what is interesting that they have. It doesn't matter what it is, but just lead with what is interesting for you. Maybe it's a product that they launched. Maybe it's a new partnership. Maybe it's their work in the community. It doesn't really matter. Because what happens when you are leading with curiosity and then using that information in your conversation, you're not going to be a robot. It's going to be a fluid conversation because you're talking about things you're genuinely interested in. It doesn't matter if you're not talking about the numbers and the dollars and cents and everything that's more technical. We're just leading with what you're generally interested in the actual company itself. So then from there, we need to start getting ready to market yourself. So preparing a targeted resume and a cover letter. And we want to make sure it's targeted. So I put here a generic resume or generic application is going to equal a generic response. Thank you so much for applying, but no thank you. Essentially, we want to have it targeted to the actual company. And as you go through that pre-application worksheet, there's even a section that will say like, can you list some things that could be selling features for yourself specifically to this company? So maybe it's a certain experience that you had prior, maybe it's a certain class that you had. Um, Try to pull out some information that's specifically to you. Not everybody around you is specific to you that would be helpful for the company. Okay. So pulling out some of that information can help you in your conversation that you'll have with a recruiter. Then from there, I want you to create a list of questions that you can ask each employer that are specific to the company. That can kind of tie into your curiosity research. So whatever you found interesting, maybe you want to find out some more information. You can also have some general questions that you can ask the recruiters that are more about their experience. What do you do at the company? How long have you been there? What has kept you there? Just kind of information to just have an open dialogue and conversation. It seems so simple when you're hearing it, but it really is that simple. And when you think about that competitor that I showed you, they didn't do any of that. They're just going in and just shooting out information randomly. And this is targeted, this is more natural. And that is really what's going to be capturing their attention. Okay, so now during the fair, I'll pause for a second if there's a question and I'll take this chance to have a sip of water.
Hi, Michelle. I have a question.
Hi. Yeah,
So first of all, I really appreciate that you're going to be sharing a worksheet with everyone. I think that's so helpful for folks because there's a lot of invaluable information that you're sharing. So I wanted to first say thank you. The other thing, I'm thinking about, you know, I put myself in the shoes of someone who's at a job fair. And I find like personally, because I get really nervous about approaching people that I don't know, having to memorize questions, it's really, really stressful for me. And then, I pull them out of my pocket, and that looks really unprofessional too. Um, and so I'm trying to picture what this would look like. Like, for example, if you're really
Mm,
nervous, could you pull out a sheet and say, I have some questions prepared. Would you mind if I ask? Or should you just sort of, instead of over preparing, because I know it's like a fine line between over preparing and under preparing, but should you just maybe like have a rough idea of the kind of information that you're interested in? And
mm,
then blurt them out, or really focus on those companies that you're really really interested, like that example that you share was with Honda, like that student who's so interested, like naturally, so it's easy for him just to show up and ask questions without being prepared. Like, I was wondering if you could navigate this, because again, having
mm.
to memorize questions in addition to, this kind of, yeah, I know it's not here, but necessarily like an elevator type pitch is just so
Mm.
overwhelming. And there are all these people around, and there's a long lineup. So I'd like to hear, I know
Mm.
this is a loaded question, but if you can sort of address this, that would be great.
Well, it's an awesome question. I like it a lot, and I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure others were wondering the same thing. So I wouldn't necessarily have to worry so much about a script. In my opinion, as you're going through and you're leading with that curiosity, things are already going to be sticking with you. And even writing down and coming up with those questions, once you've kind of written them down, they're kind of loosely in your head anyways. And if you needed to, you can have those notes, and like Anne said too, you can pull them out and look if you needed to. But what I'd even suggest is to have that list, and then before you go in and talk to that person, you can just look at your notes quickly. Okay, here were a couple of my selling points relating to it. It could be a word. So let's say you were going to Honda, for example, and it's like, "Ooh, I'm going to share about when I worked for like a third party company that was related to Honda." So I'm going to make sure I say that name and bring that into conversation. And I also see that they have just had a merger or like a revamp from their plant, and I'm gonna make a comment on that. We're just kind of fluidly putting that in, just looking at your notes, and that's it. It doesn't have to be memorized, just kind of knowing those points and then going in and starting the conversation. I wouldn't even worry, like even an elevator pitch in itself is kind of like where you'd have that nerves where everyone's around. You're just looking at your points of like, these are some things that I would be talking about. I always relate things as well to kind of like dating, for example. Like when you're going in, this is something that we're doing more often sometimes than interviewing, but you're going in, you're having like a general thing of some things that you'll bring up. You never go in with a script, but you just have some things that you might want to be talking about within there just to make more of an authentic conversation. So that's a really great question to ask, that we don't have to go in so super prepared, but just having those notes prepared and handy, that you've done that pre-work and it's kind of still in your head. We've been given the chance to think about it on what are some things that we could be asking. Could you give some effective icebreaker communication examples? You know what? So I even had like a script on it too. So I would just walk over and I would introduce myself and I would say, "Hi, I am Saeed. I am here from," I'd say like, "I'm Saeed. I'm so glad to see you here. I was taking a look at your company page and I found this interesting fact on blah, blah, blah." And then you can just go in for conversation from there. And then you can say, "Well, you know what? I actually noticed on your website that you're hiring for this position. I actually," and then you can kind of fill in the blank with giving some of your selling points in there. And then you can say, "So how long have you been at the organization for?" And then you can kind of continue from there. Just kind of casual, asking them about their experience, sharing some information about you, just a back and forth conversation. Let your mind relax to know that like you don't have to put so much pressure in yourself that this conversation is going to make it or break it for you. It really is just making that connection. That's all you need at that point. You want that person to feel like they're having a genuine, nice conversation, and it just kind of works in your favor in that way once there's been that connection built. So you don't need to be selling them hard on you're the perfect person. It's just making that fluid conversation and seeing that there is connection there. Okay, no problem. Okay, so now we are at the job fair. So you want to make sure that you're arriving early. Um, I find that this is kind of the slower time where you're also feeling like your recruiter is at their best self before they're getting exhausted from talking to people. And you want to make sure that you're dressing to impress. I know I feel like this is kind of common knowledge, but often I have gone to recruiting events, especially ones that I've even hosted where students are kind of coming in between class. And that's totally fine, but have an extra outfit that for that day or wear something nice for that day. Don't just come in with your U of T hoodie. Like we want to go in and be like representative of what we wear in an interview. We want to wear something where you're feeling confident, okay? That already is helping you stand out because like I'm saying, like this new trend, I'm surprised to see so many people who just go in comfortable clothes. You need to be going in there like you're going in for an interview. I also want you to be mindful of your mindset and release that nervous energy before you go in. So this could look like a few different ways that you could do it. And these are even things I use for interviews. This is what I did before I came to this presentation of ways that you can release that nervous energy. So for example, what I would do is probably do meditation or I can do deep breathing. One of my favorite things to do, if you're not too shy, maybe you can go to your car, is that I like to put music on. Today was Madonna, and I'll just like dance around and I'm going to get like that nervous energy out of my system because kind of like there could be some people in here who have more of this medical background to understand this, but that energy that you have for nervousness can also be changed to excited opportunity, like an excited energy. And so when we're doing that dancing or any of these different things, we can be moving that nervous energy to more of excitement. And then also just telling yourself again, I'm here to make connections. These conversations don't need to be a conversation that's going to get me a job in the spot. I'm here to make connections, and that can help you out. Because what I find where we're having those robotic conversations and feeling super awkward, it's because we're in our head. And so by doing that deep breathing, the meditation, or the dancing, get into your body. So you're able to just have the genuine conversation because they are people too. You're just going and having conversation like you do with your friends, like you do with your classmates, like you do with your coworkers. But when we are putting it in our head, that's where it's feeling so robotic and so awkward. Okay. So take that time. Okay. Um, then I'm going to suggest, so we have that list of target employers, but first reach out to people that weren't on your list. These are going to be your practice rounds. Let's just get like loosey-goosey in this setting and feel comfortable. Go up to them and just start making conversation. Do that a couple times before you go to your target employers, because this will just be your practice and build yourself some confidence. And maybe it goes well, then that's great. But if not, that's okay. We weren't having you on the target list anyways. Maybe we can move on to people that we are really interested in. Yeah, we want to warm up, Aurora. That's perfect. Okay. So then you can start talking to your employer. So just going in, introducing yourself, and then starting that conversation, right? So within these slides, I even have a script that you can kind of follow. I don't even like the word script. Let's say template. You don't need to follow it word for word, but it will at least kind of guide you in the conversation of how to have it. So don't worry so much about word for word. Sometimes I don't even like to share it because I find that that's where that getting in your head kind of happens. But just use it as a template to be like, Michelle, you made it sound so easy. What do I say? That's going to kind of guide you through. So just take that out of your mind for right now. Then you're going to be sharing your career documents, and then you're going to be asking them for their contact information. So you can say, do you have a business card? And if they say yes, great, then you have that for follow-up. If they don't, then you can say, okay, what's a great way to follow up with you? Can I connect with you on LinkedIn? And we have another option here. There's another way that you can do it. You can connect with them on LinkedIn right away. And I want to show you a cool trick. If you have your phone, if you can grab that, and I'm hoping if you have the LinkedIn app, I'm going to walk you through an activity that you can do. If not, this is recorded so you can play it again. But if you have your phone, if you can grab that, We'll wait for a second and just go on to the LinkedIn app. Let's wait a second here. Okay. So let's see if I can show you. So right now I'm just on the home page here, just the news feed, and I'm going to click on the search bar. And so now, do you see like on the search bar, there's that little square that's on the side here? There's a little square when you go on there. So I'm going to click on it. And so now that's bringing me to my QR code. So the employers can scan it and connect with you right away. So there's no waiting, there's no trying to find someone who has the same name as you, and it's just right there. But to make this a step further, so we're not going through all of those steps, you can even choose to, I'm going to see underneath it says save to photos. And then I'm going to choose the one it says save with photo. And the reason I do that, because then you can save this as your background on your phone, and just the size of what the QR code, it fits perfectly with your picture on there too. It's not too like spread out. So now you'll have that on the background on your phone. And when it's time to go, you can just say, actually, you can connect with me here. Do you have your phone? And they can connect with you. Sometimes that's even an icebreaker, a thing that will keep you memorable because they're never heard of that before. Most people haven't. And so that's just a way in itself that you can connect and have yourself stand out as well. Okay.
Michelle, we
Yeah.
had a question in the chat. Could you just please repeat that again? Because I think it's just such an invaluable tip as we're networking with folks in person.
Sorry, I was just say that again. Sorry.
Oh, if you can repeat that again, please. I think that's a
Oh,
really invaluable tip. Just if you can just go
yeah,
through it
yeah.
again. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn and I'm just on the regular news feed page. And on the search bar here, I'm going to click on it. And once I click on it, you'll see a little square that's in the corner of the, let's see where my finger's going in here, right here. I'm going to click on that. And that brings up your QR code. Right underneath it, it says save photo, and I'm going to click that. And it brings me two options. And I'm going to check the one that says save photo. And so now that's saved to my camera. And I can save that as my background if I wanted to on my phone. So then that makes it really fast for them to connect with you. Okay. And I think we have someone leaving too. That's no problem, Sad. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you can catch the end in the recording. Okay. Okay, so then from there, after you leave the booth, I suggest just bringing a notepad with you. Make some notes from your conversation. Even if you're only reaching out to 5 or 7 people that day, it is going to feel like a blur just with a mix of the energy and everything going on and maybe similar conversations. Make a little note, make a note of their name, anything that really stood out from the conversation, just to kind of remember what's happening, and you can kind of continue the conversation afterwards and you know what's kind of happening. So now that the job fair is done, what do? We're at the
Uh,
post fair phase. Yep,
Michelle, I'm sorry. I just want to ask a quick question. Can you go back to the previous slide before we move on to the last section?
sure.
Okay. So my question was, should you bring a friend with you? Because
Mm,
um, if you bring a friend with you, on the one hand, they can help you feel more relaxed and confident, in and they can, and they could make it easier for you. But on the other hand, you could come across as unprofessional because when you're having to rely on people, or let's say you bring a friend who's more outgoing than you are, and they kind of overshadow you, or they might have their own agenda and you can see because you're like, oh yeah, you want to get out of here, I want to stay forever, but yeah, I don't want to, I want to maintain my friendship. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about this, because I do think that it would be helpful for folks to know, because I know these things are really, really scary to go to for some. For me, these things,
yeah,
when I'm in that position, I find them really scary. So bringing a friend makes me feel better. But are they by doing so, are they kind of a hindrance, or are they helpful?
yeah, that's a really good question. often I see students kind of going in packs together. I don't think it's a good move. I understand it completely. I think that while you're doing your practice runs, that would be a time that you can be connecting with people, with your friends. Then I think when it's time to reach out to your target employers, you're on your own. Like the training wheels are off and you got to go off on your own. Like you listed so many reasons on why it wouldn't, like them outshining you. Like it is kind of like awkward for them, the other person to be maybe overruling the conversation and you're not able to talk. It could signal to the employers as well that like maybe that none lack of confidence to be able to go up and start talking to them. I think as well, like I just find in my experience as a recruiter, when I'd have these groups of students that would connect with me, it would feel awkward like all around. It's hard to have those conversations and you're kind of doing like a mini pitch with everyone together, but at the same time, you're actually not even able to make like, do I have any leads in any direction if I am looking for a position? Because no one is really giving a lot of information. And with any group, there's going to be like the one or two people that are out talking everybody, and then there's ones that are absolutely silent. And all of it's not good because even as well, the employer thinks, well, that person who's talking a lot, maybe yes, they're outgoing, but it may also look like they don't give people opportunities to talk. Like it can go in so many different ways. So that is a really good question. I think that you should go on your own. And if you need to have that like emotional support, at least for the beginning, do that with your practice people. Break away, then do your own thing. It's not often you have the opportunity to meet with employers in person. You need to get a job. Unless that friend is paying for your bills forever, you need to be going out and talking to people so you can find your job. Any other questions? I don't know if I missed anything. I love that you have been engaging in the chat. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay. So now from follow-up. Once you're done, you want to follow up with those connections that you made. This is where most people just let it slide. I can probably tell you out of all of the job fairs that I've done, I've probably received like literally 5 or 6 follow-up messages. That's it. So you can imagine how much you can stand out. We want to do this follow-up within 24 hours because recruiters are busy. And so the more time they have away from that conversation, the more conversations they're having. And even if you did do really well, sometimes that memory of it starts to dissipate because now they're having tons of more conversations, they're going to more job fairs. So reach out to them. And what I would do is just, thank you so much for speaking with me. It was nice to meet you at this event. Add in something specific about the conversation that you enjoyed, or maybe you have another question about. I would attach your resume as well. And that just gives them a refresher. If you're doing this on LinkedIn, I kind of get in the habit of whenever I'm connecting with someone from an event, I add in where we met because that's helpful for me. Because as you start doing some networking, you're going to remember where that connection started from. And that's kind of like a record of history of like how that connection was created. Now, I want to show you something else that you can do on LinkedIn, and this can really help you stand out. You can actually do voice notes on LinkedIn. And why I find that helpful is because you start to make that connection again. One, you still have that part of where they think, wow, I didn't even know you could do voice notes on there. So you have that to kind of work on. But then the second thing is that once people hear your voice, you're starting to build that connection more. And so as you're building that connection, you might have heard this before that people do business, aka hiring people, that they know, like, and trust. So that builds that trust factor, that builds that likability factor, and it helps you stand out again, right? So you're going in and just leaving your voice there, and that makes a big difference. So let's see if we can do this now. Let's see if you already connected maybe with Anne already, or maybe even myself, or even you can do this to a friend. But what I want you to do is to go on to LinkedIn. This is only done through your phone. If you can go to the messages. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can bring up, there'll be a little icon with a pencil to get to your messages. I'm going to click that. Oops, it's the bubble. So you're going to go to your bubble. and I'm going to click on someone's name. So I'm going to do this for Anne here, just to show you. Oh, for some reason, I'm not finding you in there. I'll do it to my friend Kim. She'll love it. Okay, so I'm going on to the message here, and if you can see, there's a little microphone just above the keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to click and hold that. I'm going to say, hey, Kim, I hope you're having a great day. That's fine. Whatever the message is. So I recorded it and then I let my finger go, and now you'll see like a little blue line where I've left a voice note. You have the option too that if I were to click on it and hold it, there is a button where you can delete it. So if you're like, oh, that wasn't a good one, let me delete that, you can delete it. While you're in the conversation, if you slide your finger a little, it will say like, do you need to record? So you have the option to re-record if you need to. And then you'll see it look like this. So then it will say like message deleted. So you will probably want to go in and do that again and not just leave it at that. But that's another great way that you can be following up as well. Does anyone need me to show that again? We're all good. Oh, how do we know when job fairs are happening? Yes. So typically your school will be advertising it, and I tell you because I know that I was in career services too. Make sure, if anything, like when you see an email from Blueprint Career Services, don't ignore it, because I bet you the ones that you're ignoring are the ones that are going to be about a job fair. That's typically a big thing. Emails are coming to you about it, but sometimes they can feel just kind of like white noise in the background. A lot of them are coming to you, so look from that way. Also, I do Google searches. On LinkedIn, if you look through the events tab, sometimes there's job fairs that come up there as well that will be virtual. And sometimes you can even go to company pages and see if they're going to be in any community events or if they're having their own job fairs as well. And yes, and what if you're not in school? So then the Google services will help. I also would suggest too of even following any of the career services in your area. They'll be often doing like different events as well. So, Employment Ontario for just as an idea, if you're following any of those pages, they'll have some information too of when they're doing them. Those would be kind of like the best things. The Google searches, and then looking through kind of career services, what they have going on. Good question.
Michelle, if I can just add to that, thank you for that. So I agree. So just to confirm what you're saying, so follow what Michelle means by follow EO offices. So EO service providers like the Access Employment, the labor education center. People probably haven't heard of that one because it's quite small. Where else? Achieve, so these are
Hmm.
places, employment agencies that you should be following. Or you can, even if you don't know any, just look up EO funded programs, and there's going to be a huge list. So yes, if you follow those organizations, you find out about employment fairs. Also, maybe follow temp agencies as well, because they also have information that they might share about job fairs and definitely government. So I think that these are really, really great. Like, yeah, this is a really great questions, because I mean, I find out about job fairs because I'm connected with all of these people. The Metro Convention Center tends to have a lot of job fairs. I know that they're quite big, but you might want to just peruse their calendar, because they have them scheduled way in advance, and we've been to lots of those. And so I think that's a really, really, really great start. And Michelle, just to rewind, I'm looking at the chat here
Hmm.
because I just want to make sure not to get that. Someone wants you to repeat how you did the voicemail thing.
Oh, okay, sure. So let me go back to that. Okay. So I'm going to go to messages, and that is like the little conversation box that's right here. I'm going to click on that, and then you can write a new message. So you'll see where the pencil is, and I'll choose that. You'll type your contact's name in. Then from there, just above the keyboard, you'll see a little microphone just here. I'm going to click and hold that, and I'm going to leave a message. So I'm going to click and hold. You're going to see it's so awkward to be positioning. I can't. Then you'll just record the message. You'll see it recording there, and then you can just let it go. And then you'll see that it looks like this with the little blue line. That's my 8-second clip. And if I didn't like that one, all I'm going to do is click and hold. And then there's a spot that says deleted, and I can delete that message from the conversation. Okay, so that's it. Feel free to practice on me. I'll have at the end my QR code and send voice messages today. I'll love them all. I'll respond. Okay. So you know what, Jelena? I feel like you just naturally knew. I don't know what's happening with my camera here. Let me fix that. I think you knew what was happening in my next slide because you just brought me exactly to some additional ways that we can be networking. So job fairs really are a place to network. So even thinking about outside of job fairs and ways that we can be networking, I have kind of a list of different things that you could do. So we created that target list for employers at the job fair. Well, you can expand your target employer list to just employers in general that you might be interested in working for. From there, you can find out if they're going to be in community events or they're hosting any open houses or recruitment events. So for example, like while I've worked for some companies, we've attended in community events, like for example, there has been like cultural days where we've had like a little table set up. That's still an opportunity that you can go and talk to someone who works at that company. The other options as well, so these are more for one-on-one networking opportunities or informational interviews that you can do to gather information. There are two of them that I would suggest. There's one called Alignable, and there's another one called Lunch Club. And essentially, there's kind of like AI built into it that they're able to match you based on the people that you want to be connecting with. And they'll do all the setting up of like, you're going to meet at this time, here's the information, click on this link, and then you can set up a time. I know specifically with Lunch Club, you can have this as an ongoing thing in your calendar where maybe you have a lunch club meet every Thursday at 12 o'clock, and they'll kind of like work ahead to kind of fill up that schedule for you. So that could be a way that you can start making those connections. The other option as well is looking at professional associations. They do a ton of great events. So there could be events where it's more knowledge based. You're finding out some more specific information about a skill in your industry. Then afterwards, there'll be a networking piece. Or sometimes they just have a general networking session for people in the area. So that would be a good opportunity. And then looking to see if there's any like chamber of commerce. So a chamber of commerce is essentially a group of businesses in the area. Will have kind of different events to be able to support each other and grow their networks as well. Those would be some really good opportunities to look into as well. They're not always open to the public, but they're definitely good to be looking through. Even tying that back to the target employer list, that would be a good spot to even be looking through the directory of those local chambers to see companies that you could reach out to. So there are a lot of other ways that you can be building your network, and don't just rely on going on LinkedIn and sending those kind of like blank messages out to people. Go out and try to find ways where you can have those one-on-one connections with people.
And Michelle, thank you for that. If I can just expand on this a little bit more, because I think you're touching upon something super important. So I'm going to offer some additional ways that you can network, and then I'd love to hear from all of you who are here today how any additional ideas that you have. Because over the years, Michelle, working with so many different folks who've been successful, they've used so many different tactics, and sometimes I'm thinking like, wow, I would never do that. Like cold calls? Are you serious? People don't do cold calls anymore. Or I knew someone that but anyway, she was comfortable with it and she got a job that way. I knew someone that networked on Facebook. I know that Facebook is kind of going out of style, but she literally put a post out. My husband lost his job. He's in IT. Does anyone have any ideas or connections? That's how we got a job. I'm not suggesting that folks out there do things like this. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with. From my perspective, coming from School of Continuing Studies, Michelle, and having the opportunity to take a course with School of Continuing Studies, um, participating in courses through colleges or universities is a really great way to network because you're automatically, you have something in common. A lot of the time these classes, they have group work opportunities. If you can go in person, that's ideal because that way you can form these relationships even better. But definitely, with your instructors, whoever's teaching the courses, that's networking opportunities. So it's a win-win situation because you're building your network by taking classes, but you're also boosting your resume and showing employers that you're growing and learning, and it will help. And also gives you a sense of purpose. I know I'm rattling on a little bit, but I know in times of my life when I've been unemployed and having to make my own schedule, it can be really, really tough to stay motivated. But then if I can take a course, um, then I feel like it's giving me purpose. Like this is something I have to do. I'm looking forward to it. I'm growing. I'm not just applying for jobs or putting myself out there and not getting calls. So I really, really encourage folks to do it. I just want to point one other little thing, and then I would love to hear from everyone because everyone's full of great ideas. I want to tap into folks who are here today in terms of their knowledge about this whole thing, but also with School of Continuing Studies as well as like at U of T as well as for any of the other institutions. Funding is available through Better Jobs Ontario, and you just have to see an EO service provider. And also, if you go onto the actual school's website, they have funding options like OSAP, believe it or not, can pay for part-time programs, and they might have bursaries as well. So, just want to add that. But Michelle, if I can just put it out there from our wonderful group that's here today, what are some networking tips that all of you have? I mean, obviously, we're here to talk about networking at job fairs and these fantastic ideas that Michelle gave us. And I suggested, going back to school maybe, but any other ideas? What are some other great things that you can do to network? And you can put them in the chat or you can shout them out because small enough
I
group.
did see some good ones here. Mary
Oh,
even listed here. So Eventbrite, Meetup, and school websites, as well as city websites, four great ones. I think the Meetup one is a really good option too. Because, like you even talked about like going to courses. I think even pursuing personal pursuits,
I
like
agree.
things that you might just like doing anyways, honestly, it's good as far as like your job search that you should be taking that mental break of doing something else. But keep in mind that when you're doing other things and making these other connections, even personally, that's still an opportunity to network.
I think that's a great idea. I put a heart there because I totally wholeheartedly agree because part of it is, this whole job search thing can be really grinding on you and it can be so draining. And so I like to encourage folks to try to engage in activities that actually bring them joy. You don't necessarily have to spend a ton of money. You could sign up with courses with your local district school board. Like for example, with Toronto with the TDSB, um, we have the learn anyway. They're evening, fun classes that you can take, and they're very reasonably priced. Meetups are fantastic, and I think that's a great idea too. I mean, they're free. You can just show up and not necessarily going with the intention of I'm going to engage in these fun activities because I need a job. More like it's fun. I want to meet people. I want to expand my network, but not necessarily having an agenda. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And have trying to work on that, try and do something enjoyable because this whole job search thing, it is so stressful, Michelle.
Exhausting, like emotionally and physically. Right?
Yeah.
So taking that break to do like other things is like needed for sure. Like the only way you can be able to market yourself good is that you're having that break. Like you need to refuel yourself.
I even want to, if I can expand on that, and I don't hope I'm not kind of stealing your thunder, but you haven't mentioned it yet, so I don't think so. But what I say to folks, especially those who are, who are not who are not outgoing naturally, we're going to job fairs is really scary, and it's scary for a lot of us. I mean, including me. But treating yourself afterwards. And again, I'm not suggesting going out there, going on a shopping spree, because obviously not all of us, I would encourage that period, but just doing like having rewarding yourself afterwards, whether it's like, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to put myself out there and do this really scary thing. And then when I get home, I'm going to take off these uncomfortable shoes and, whatever it is, go for a walk, watch, a comedy on Netflix, or, have a chocolate bar or something, like just something that makes you feel good, or go for a walk with my mom, or just something that feels good, but just something like, okay, I just need to get through these next 3 hours, and then I'm going to go, do something that makes me feel good. Because if you have the courage to go these job fairs and put yourself out there, you deserve to reward yourself, Michelle. Like, I really, really feel that, because they are scary. They are draining for most of us. And if you don't take the time to take care of yourself and reward yourself and have something to look forward to, you're just going to, you're not going to come across in a very positive way to employers. It's that tiredness, that exhaustion. It is, that feeling defeated. It is going to come across to employers. So take care of yourself, treat yourself afterwards, have something to look forward to, because these things are not easy. Michelle's making our lives easier, but they're not easy. And I think we've got to recognize that. And we've got to recognize it takes a lot of courage to go these things.
Yeah, I think especially if you are recognizing yourself as someone who might have social anxiety or just introverted, letting yourself be okay that after the job fair that you don't do any job search that day. Allow yourself to be okay with that. Do whatever you want. I know that, like, because that can almost in turn be a really stressful situation. And one time I had a therapist who had really good advice that whenever I was putting myself in stressful situations, she's like, allow yourself to like baby yourself afterwards, like do all your favorite things. Like, what is a dream night for Michelle? And so, like, in that night, I was like, oh, like, I'm going to do journaling. I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to get snacks together. I'm going to watch like my favorite shows. Like, and that's all. If that's all I did that day, then that's okay. After that stressful event, I am babying myself and just taking care of like my inner child, I guess you could say, afterwards, because that was not comfortable for you. And let's just have that the rest of the day just really super enjoyable. So yes, does anyone else have any questions? I know we're like only 10 minutes left, but any questions at all, whether it's this or job search in general, I'm happy to answer them for you. And I have my QR code there to connect, and I encourage you to leave me a voice note. Try it out. I'm a good person to practice on, and I'll love to hear those messages.
Michelle, do you see that question from Carlos? I think it's a really good question, and I am mindful of the
Oh, no,
time.
I haven't been scrolling.
Okay, I'm scrolling.
No.
I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to all these questions. If we haven't had a chance to respond to all of them, I will be getting a transcript and sharing these questions that haven't been answered with Michelle, and then we'll be sharing the answers on our website. But I do want to answer this because I love it. I love all of these questions. This one stands out. What percentage of the workforce, Michelle? Oh, Carlos asks, what percentage of the workforce gets a job directly through job fairs? If 85% already do so through direct referrals, then through portals like LinkedIn or Indeed, the probability of failure is small. Hmm.
Hmm,
Um,
that's a good question. But at the same time, they're there to build their network the same way. So sometimes they run out of people in their own network, and that's a way for them to expand. I don't have the specific numbers on that, but here's something that you could do. Let's say you already have your list of specific employers that you're targeting. You can go onto Glassdoor. And when you look at that company profile, there's going to be some information in their interview tab that will say, how did candidates land an interview? And they'll have like different things, whether it was through like referrals, job fairs, etc. It gives you what is the most, like it gives you percentages of how people were able to land that first interview. So that can help you out. But you're right. So like people are still being hired from from the job fair. I don't know what the percentage is, but you'll have to look at it as well as that is their way that they're able to expand that existing network that they have, right? So if they met you through the job fair and then down the road that they're hiring for someone, you're categorized in that category of you are in my network. You know, it might not be right away, but you're in their network.
Michelle,
Advice
I think
on
that's a
preparing.
really, oh, did someone ask a question? Someone?
Yeah, yeah, Aurora.
Oh, Aurora, please go. Take it away. I love this. Thank you for speaking up.
So Aurora was asking here, any advice in preparing a targeted resume? If I'm going to apply to more than one position, how do you suggest to shape a resume differently? So this is something I can talk about for days upon days, but I'm going to give you my short answer that will give you a punch of information kind of thing. One, that pre-application prep sheet is going to be helpful because what I find is that people are not really connecting themselves as a whole and all of their experiences to the job. This is going to help you critically think about the position so those words can be more fluid out of you of how those connections meet. Secondly, I like to do something called qualifications mapping. So let's say there is a job posting that is available. I look at those qualifications and I go through line by line and ask myself, do I have this on my resume? Yes, good, check that off. If I don't, I'm going to put a comment beside it on what section of my profile or of my resume should I put it in, and where have I gained the skill, or what can I talk about that will tell the recruiter, yes, I have it. Once you have that, that's essentially like a roadmap of what you need to be including in your resume. And we want to be prioritizing close to the top section of your resume because recruiters are going through it fast. So we want to get those qualifications answered closer to the top. Another rule of thumb as well, like, sometimes we'll get some of those more softer skills or power skills on the qualifications, like teamwork, etc., that can be talked about in every single job. And what I find that most candidates do is that they will give a generic statement. So, saying something like experience working independently and in a team environment. So then they think, great, I've already like categorized that I have teamwork. That's not enough because you're going to be like that 98% where you're just giving a generic thing. You want to be describing a little bit more. So I would say something like, maybe something like 3 years experience working in project management and supporting a team, blah, blah, blah. Like, so we're giving some specific information on how we've actually developed that teamwork skill. Tie it to an accomplishment that you've had. So it brings out that information of how you've met it. That is making yourself stand out because the average generic way that you can say it about every single person on this call is going to make you on that no pile. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect.
Thanks,
We
Michelle.
have
I'm
one
just,
here too.
did you
Yeah.
find another one? Because I'm just
Yeah.
looking through. Um, I can see there's a question from a Sarah who asked, can you repeat the email that was meant? I'm not sure what that is. Meditation.
The email that was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting.
The
The
email.
email.
Did you mean the Blueprint Career Services email?
Oh,
That was that it? If you can,
I think so.
I think okay. So if we can get maybe Carla, if you can share that. Um, yes. Oh, thank you, Carla. Michelle, I'm just looking at the
Hmm.
time here. We have about 3 minutes. I just want to sort of say something like kind of to sum things up, and I'd love to hear your kind of final thoughts. So job fairs are obviously a really great, can be a really great way to increase your chances of getting a job. And Michelle shared some incredible tactics to make the most of the job fair experience. But if you don't want to go, if it's something that you're like, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, or I've been to one and I never want to go back. We're not suggesting that you do. We're not saying you must go to job fair if you want to get a job. It's just one tactic. And Michelle, I don't know about you, but again, I've met so many folks over the years, whether they're students or they're in their mid-level of their career who found jobs all different kinds of ways. And I know it can be very frustrating because, you need a job. But people find jobs in all kinds of ways. My niece just found a job and she just didn't meet anyone, Michelle. She didn't network at all. She just applied to a bunch of jobs. I think like 200 online. I don't even know if she did targeted resume. She got an interview. She was good at interviews. She got the job. I would never have guessed that this would happen because I'm always telling people the importance of networking, which it is. But my point is, this worked for her, So this is just one tactic. And Michelle, you've been so helpful in providing a very concrete ways to make the most of job fairs if you do decide that's something that you want to do. Michelle, did you have any concluding thoughts as we're kind of wrapping things up? Because I would love to hear your thoughts about all this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. You'll find as you're learning some strategies, some will work for you and some won't. I think it's important to be adding strategy in some way because, yes, you'll end up finding a job, but if you do need something sooner than later, adding in some form of strategy is going to be helpful. And networking is kind of a scary word, but think of it as really as I'm trying to make authentic relationships with people who maybe share the same interests as me of like, maybe you are in a new career and you really like this aspect of it. Try to find people who also like the same thing. And that is you networking. You can also kind of nerd out and talk about all those different things that you like. And in turn, that usually ends up to being opportunities as well. So don't look at it so much of like, I need to check the box of like, okay, networking done. Just go at it. I'm looking to make professional friends, like friends in my professional network.
Yeah, I really
Oh,
like that.
awesome. I'm glad that you'll be connecting, Julia.
That's great. That's really great. So please do reach out to Michelle or I on LinkedIn or through our websites, and we can definitely provide you with more support. Again, this is being shared. This will be shared on our Blueprint Career Services portal. So without further ado, I guess we'll end the session. But please do stay tuned on upcoming events with Blueprint Career Services. And Michelle, I'd like to give a really warm thanks to you for being such an amazing, engaging presenter. I'm so glad I had an excuse to connect with you again because you're so wonderful and I love our connection. But more, of course, equally, or if not more importantly, no offense, Michelle, I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us today and taken time out of their busy lives to sit into this incredible presentation. We wouldn't have this presentation without you. And thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you, everyone.